The next speaker is Nancy Smerkanich from the University of California. And Nancy is Educational Liaison, Regulatory Science Doctoral Candidate at the University of Southern California. Am I good?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And she's going to be speaking on a funny thing happened on the way to...
You'll find out.
And now we're going to find out.
Thank you very much. So the theme of this presentation is actually on planning. I love to plan. I like to plan parties. I like to plan vacations, NDA submissions, DIA sessions. So it's no surprise that I like to have a life plan. And so this is a little bit of a background to my life plan, which begins in 1957. So for those of you who aren't familiar with that time period, except for if you watch Mad Men, cars were big, airports were small, kids got dressed up to go to school, and preventive medicine in the form of vaccinations was not particularly advanced. My story starts because I was actually considered a sickly child. I had every respiratory infection that you could catch. I even had a lazy eye. It was really sad. I was so sick that on occasion I couldn't make it home from school and would end up laying in a snowbank where I had to be rescued by my dad or my EMTs. I ended up actually having a cardiac catheterization in 1962. There are no pictures of pediatric cardiac catheterizations because they probably were illegal. And I was diagnosed with a congenital heart and lung defect. And somehow I made it through and planned to get through every winter. And I owe a lot of that to the use of sulfa drugs as an anti-infective. I was poor at sports and activities, but I was very good at school, and so I made it my mission to excel both in high school and in college. And when I finally got old enough, I developed what I liked to call Plan A. Plan A going into my time as an adult was going to involve going to med school. I had my eye on Yale, being a pediatric cardiologist, owning a beach house, being a single woman with a really cool car. I made a couple of detours along the way. One was wonderful. I studied in what was then the Soviet Union in St. Petersburg, Russia, and ended up getting a degree in Russian, which probably a lot of people don't know. And then I had a major detour a couple of years later when I actually didn't get into medical school. I moved to Boston. I actually worked at Children's Hospital. That is actually where my office was in that building. And apparently I consoled myself with a lot of wine because this is the only picture I could find of myself. And I knew that, well, it was time for a new plan, and I found this, and I thought, well, you know what? Plan A is fine, but there are plenty other letters in the alphabet, so I'm going to make myself a new plan. A funny thing happened on actually developing Plan B, and that's that I met this man, Mark, in 1981, and I actually married him the same year, which I don't think people really do anymore. And so it was Plan B, and that sounds like it would be bad, but it actually is good. Plan B was actually, you know, totally acceptable as a plan. Plan B came with its own set of challenges. I needed to relocate again, this time to outside of Philadelphia, to the suburbs, and I started a job at a company I never really heard of called Merck. So Plan B was progressing, and then it actually expanded. In the late 80s, I had two daughters, Kira and Natalie. Again, kind of unexpected for someone who didn't want to get married or have kids, but they involved having a new plan as well. Part of that new plan was being a working mom, which I gave my all for 5 years, and then decided to become a stay-at-home mom, which only lasted 2 weeks. I ended up doing consulting and going to work for a startup company, and then it was like you fell asleep on the remote control. Fast forward 20 years in a blink of an eye. And by the way, there's no good images of Rip Van Winkle, but I thought the bourbon actually served the purpose. So Plan B, expansion. I woke up from that sleep and I had two grown children, one of whom is an attorney in Washington, D.C. The other one is a Peace Corps volunteer returning next month. They cost a lot of money, but they were absolutely worth it. And over that time period that I worked on both, full-time and part-time, I worked on so many drugs that got approved. I had a lot of drugs that didn't get approved, but more than that did. And I hope that they're out there helping as many people with their plans as the sulfa drugs did for me. So now I have a new plan. I have to come up with plan C because Mark, my husband, retired and said, I think you should think about retiring. You know, maybe we could, you know, move to the beach. Well, that wasn't actually going to work for me. I moved to the beach. I actually live in Los Angeles now. As you heard, I go to USC. I work in the International Center for Regulatory Science there. I'm getting my doctorate, and I'm 57 years old. But I want to leave you with, I think, the theme and my overall thought. My husband actually sent me this quote, which I took as a very good sign of support. You know, it's wonderful to have a life plan, but it's very freeing to know that you can rip that up, and there's 23 more letters left, at least for me. Thank you very much.